Welcome to the Founder's Mind. This is your host, Adam Muchler. On this episode, I have Brett Podolsky, the co-founder of The Farmer's Dog, a healthy dog food subscription service. Listen in as Brett shares how he turned a passionate concern about his sick dog into a thriving startup. Brett went from comedian to startup founder to raising $38 million in VC money. Take a listen as Brett shares what he's learned along the way. Hey, Brett, welcome to The Founder's Mind.
Thank you so much for having me.
I was doing a little internet sleuthing and I just saw on Crunchbase, did you just raise a significant round of capital?
We did. I'm happy we got to launch it before this conversation. It sucked. I've been holding it back for a long time, but we just closed a $39 million Series B with.
Wow, that's amazing.
Interest. Thank you.
Cool. I know we spoke in December, and I try and do at least a little research, and I was refreshing myself, and I saw that number, and I was like, that seems significantly different than what it was even 3 weeks ago or a month ago. And I did a little double check. That's great.
Thank you.
Sounds like people are at least doubling or tripling down on the future of pet well-being.
Yeah. Over the years, like, all of the growth and the growth has been massive in the pet industry, and pretty much all of it has gone on in the premium segment. And the interesting thing about the premium segment of the pet industry, of the pet market, is that it's not actually better products. It's the same old product marketed to be better. So we're just kind of taking the marketing, and actually the product is actually living up to the same standards as the marketing for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always such an interesting differentiator is, just build something that's amazing, just build something that's great. That's the hard thing. But knowing that if you can achieve that, a lot of things will fall in line, including, the marketing and including, whatever growth you're looking for. I just saw that, so I wanted to start there because I noticed that was significantly different. So congrats again. But I think it'd be great for listeners, and just in your own words, a little bit about who you are and what you're up to. Well, what are you building over there? Are you in Brooklyn?
Yeah, we're actually in Williamsburg right now. Okay. I guess I can give you a little bit of the backstory. My dog Jada was sick for 2 years, and I couldn't find the solution to her stomach problems. Finally, I went to a vet, recommended that I tried home cooking for her, which every vet does typically. But this vet recommended it for more of a long-term solution.
Yeah.
But when I went and cooked for her, all of her symptoms cleared up. And it was unbelievable to see the difference. And the recipe that I used was no different than what was apparently used in the dog food that I was feeding her. But for some reason, when I cooked it, it looked like food. And when I was buying it from, the pet store, it looked like brown balls. And I started to wonder, well, what's going on in pet food, and why have we been conditioned to think that dogs should be eating these brown balls, where there's no other living being on the planet that eats like this every single day of their lives.
Yeah.
I mean, even, human beings, like everybody's starting to move away from the highly processed foods, and even as snack foods, let alone every meal of their life. So anyway, I looked into the pet food industry, and what I found was actually pretty scary. For anybody that has done research into the pet industry and how pet food is made, it's pretty alarming, actually. And there's been a lot of studies recently that have come out. And I mean, for instance, the process that they use to make the food, which was once food, into these brown balls is called extrusion. And the temperatures that they use for this process, a byproduct of that is acrylamide, which causes cancer in animals. So, we're seeing cancer rates going through the roof, and diabetes rates going through the roof, because we're feeding them far more carbohydrates, glucose, than they should be eating, of course. And obesity rates going through the roof. So anyway, after learning about the pet industry, and I just wanted something better for my dog, and I did some research trying to find the brand that I felt comfortable feeding her. And to make a long story short, when I realized that there was just no brands out there that I felt comfortable feeding my dog, we decided to build that brand. And so that's really who we are. We're just the brand that we wish had existed for our own dogs. So we decided to not only make food for our dogs, but try to also make every dog in the country or the world healthier too.
A noble cause, especially for I'm sure for dog owners out there who listen.
Yeah, we all love our dogs so much, and they deserve so much better than what we've been giving them. And I really don't think it's anybody's fault. It's not definitely not the pet parents. I think every pet parent actually wants to, and if not already believes that they're giving their dog the healthiest diet. And that's because we've been conditioned through marketing for decades to believe the dog should be eating brown balls, when in reality, dogs should be eating food, just actual real food that's complete and balanced for their needs.
Well, that makes sense to me, and it is very interesting. This idea that most vets will recommend making home cooked food, to mitigate some some unhealthiness in your dog, and that like in reality, it's true for any animal. Like even with humans, right? We should be eating healthier, and it would mitigate a lot of illnesses that we have.
Absolutely, I think the first known doctor had it right from day one. Hippocrates, let food be thy medicine. We've known it all along.
I mean, I think that this story kind of plays out a couple times, or when you listen to founders, it's like, I wanted this thing, I needed this thing, I thought this thing should exist, I looked for it, it didn't exist, so I decided to do it and make this thing. So in your case, obviously, significantly healthier food for dogs. How did you go from this thing is missing to I'm going to actually start a business? Because I mean, I don't think it's a flippant decision.
Yeah, well, I guess like me, I think like every other dog person, you don't just love your dog, you love every dog. So for me, like when I realized this, I was just like, I can't make something. I could easily go and cook food for my dog, and that would be a great solution for my dog. But like, just me as a person, I'm like, I'm the guy that likes a new product and has to get all of my friends and family to get it too. And if I were to switch my dog's food to something better, I'd be the guy telling everybody to switch their dog's food. But in this case, I wouldn't be able to tell them to switch food because it was just no company doing it. If I had found that company, I just would have referred everybody to that company. So I realized I actually needed to create that company before I went and convinced all my friends and family to switch their dogs over.
That's I like that. I appreciate that. And I feel similarly. Like I didn't start a business selling computers, but I worked at Apple for 7 years after I had already sold all of my friends and family on getting Apple products. And I was like, oh, like I should go do this and get paid. So there's I see like a little bit of a connection. What were some of the first things you did though, when you were like, you have this, I don't know if there's a good connotation to vigilante, but this vigilante feeling of there's got to be something better. There must be something better to, making that first batch. And then even from making that first batch to selling that first batch, what was that process?
Yeah, so there was a few things we needed to do. Well, first we put up a landing page, which felt like, well, where else do you start a future e-commerce business than the landing page? And then we started to think about just understanding the market and then understanding how to create the product. So we did a cost analysis to see what other companies were charging people for their food on a daily basis. And the other thing that we decided to build was a nutritional database where we took every potential ingredient that dogs could eat, and based on the type of cooking process that you were going to use and the volume or weight of that food, we basically broke down in a spreadsheet what all the nutrient levels were. So essentially what it was meant to create was a database where we would be able to go in and create recipes on the fly that were automatically complete and balanced. But we soon realized that that's not how you do it in the dog food industry. I'm happy we did it because we learned so much. But we learned that you actually are supposed to just go to a veterinary nutritionist, do all that work for you. And then you also kind of have just like the stamp of approval behind you that a veterinary nutritionist did it. Sure. So we ended up watching some seminars, and one of the seminars was a veterinary nutritionist that was like one of the leading vets in the country, and we just decided to reach out to him directly, and he created our original recipes.
So a landing page is pretty much free, right? I mean, like a domain and whatever, maybe a WordPress or even Squarespace. The research was time, but pretty much free. Were you putting together sort of your own savings to? I'm assuming you paid the veterinary nutritionist.
So in terms of like the things that cost money, well, he kind of helped us out from early stage, because he too was really passionate about the idea and knew we really didn't have any money. It was around that time that we realized, okay, we'd actually probably put a couple of bucks into this company, so we could invest a little bit and not have to be overly cheap on everything. So, we definitely didn't go to like designers or branding agency or anything like that. But we each put $10,000 in.
Okay.
And, to actually get the business started, what we did was with the website, we put up a waiting list, because we started getting submissions that we had no product. We were just, getting going. So when we put up the waiting list, and all of a sudden it started to get a little bit of buzz, and we started getting a lot of people signing up to the waiting list.
Yeah.
So when we decided that it was time to cook, what actually happened was somebody on the waiting list called us up and said, "Hey, like I hate to do this, but can you push me ahead on the waiting list so we're next?" Not realizing that like we were actually not selling a product, so there was not really like a waiting list to cut.
Yeah.
And she was like, "You don't understand. Like, my dog really needs this food. I don't know what to do. I can't cook it because, they need to be eating food that's complete and balanced." And she was very nervous. And Jonathan and I basically looked at each other and we're like, I mean, if there's any day or any time to start this, like, this is it. Like, what are we doing this for if not to help people like this and dogs like this? So that's when we basically decided, like, okay, so let's find a couple of customers on our waiting list that all live in the same neighborhood. So deliveries would be a little bit easier. We rented out a kitchen. We signed up a few, like, I think it was 8 people, all in like the lower Manhattan area. And we signed them up with a phone, charged their credit cards, went and bought food, and paid for the kitchen with that money, cooked the food, froze it, and then hand delivered it. And that's basically what we did for the next like year and a half, where we slowly signed people up over the phone and cooked and delivered all by hand ourselves.
Wow, that's wild. So what would you constitute as slowly? So you had 8 people.
So we did 8 for a little bit, and then we realized we kind of looked at the numbers and we're like, okay, so we're going to run out of we're going to run out of money. We're not growing. We're not learning fast enough. So, we went from every 2 weeks. And so the way that the kitchen schedule worked is actually what ended up informing some of the other beautiful things that happened, like the subscription model and the customization. It fast tracked us into doing that because we only were able to get the kitchen once every 2 weeks. Therefore, we needed to make food that lasted each of our customers exactly 2 weeks. We also needed to make sure that our customers weren't going to feed too much or too little, so they wouldn't be right on track with us. So we had to make pre-portioned bags to ensure that they weren't going to feed, they weren't going to run out of food. So that all of like the customization actually came out of necessity. It also happened to be the perfect experience. So anyway, we realized, okay, cooking every 2 weeks is actually not in our best interest because we're learning half as fast. So then we started cooking once every week. We couldn't cook any more than that because then we had no other time in the office, because we would cook one day a week and deliver the other day. And then we had basically 3 office days in the middle. But of course, at that time, it was a 7-day-a-week job for us.
Yeah. Were you working in another job, or was this full time?
No. As soon as we had that moment of like, all right, we're doing this. That was it. He was doing consulting at the time, and I was actually a stand-up comedian at the time, so it was a lot easier for me to transition out of that. I didn't really have to quit any job at that point. So yeah, as soon as we really got going, it was just 24/7. All we focused on was this.
What? So you've been doing this for looks like about 5 years. Um, what's a piece of advice that comes to mind that you've received over the last 5 years as a co-founder of a company that's been really impactful?
Hmm. Yeah, I think just simple advice that I'd relay to anybody for that matter, not just like future founders or current founders, is just to do something that you love. I think I see way too many people, especially here in New York, spending every single day of their lives doing something that, I mean, it might sound really nice in a bar to tell people that, I do X for a living.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you're not happy every day of your life going into your office, if you're not excited every day, you're wasting such valuable time. Life is not all about your career and how successful you are. I mean, some people define success as like literally like how much money they're making and how wealthy they are. But I mean, I look at it. There's so many more elements to define success in my life. For me, it's like my family and my relationships are taken into account. And luckily here, um, we have such an amazing team and we have such an amazing project that we're working on. That's obviously really energizing every day because we're making dogs healthy. But on top of that, I also have a really incredible team. I'm surrounded every day by people that are so talented and so smart and also just really kind, wonderful people. And if you're working at a place that might look good on paper, but you're surrounded every day by people who are just you know not good for your mental well-being, I don't recommend you stick around for much longer. There's so many other things that are much more important than life than what your resume looks like.
I think you bring up a really good point, and I agree. Like do what you love, and it's something that I subscribe to. But it's also something that can be a big challenge to get to, right? Like you were practicing comedy, and it sounds like that's something that really brought you a lot of joy, and you found yourself building this brand around creating healthy food for dogs. But so many people are stuck, and how do you make that leap? Do you have any advice in starting to make that transition or even identifying that there is a change that needs to be made?
Yeah, well, I think you have to take a look at yourself and just think like, am I happy what I'm doing? Like, am I happy every day? Because I'm a big believer in being happy every day. And I think it's all also about how you're looking at it. Some people are just looking to, certain people are really happy just, even if they're, you might be a workaholic, you might enjoy that job where you have to work, 100 hours a week, but it's not your company. And, if you're happy, you're happy. And I think, but if you're somebody who is clearly unhappy with what you're doing, I'm not saying to just go and quit your job. You really have to look at your own circumstances. If you're not, if you go and quit your job and then you're going to put yourself in a really terrible financial situation where you can't sustain, that's obviously one thing. But if you're in a situation where you could afford to take a break, then you should do so. Go and travel and see the world. I very much recommend traveling to people. It changed my life, and I think it has the power to change anybody's life. And it's one of those experiences where you leave, you get out of your day to day, and you're able to look at life through a different lens and realize what's really important. Sometimes it's just really important to hit the refresh button and just take that leap. If you have a job that you're not happy with and you could afford to take some time off, then do it. It's to me, it's all about focusing on happiness.
Yeah, I mean, I just co-sign that whole statement. And clearly you found something that brings you a lot of happiness and a lot of joy. Um, what's something as you started building the team? I kind of want to go back to this, and you talked about it. Working with incredible people, making sure that people that are working there, working are enjoying their job. How do you find people that are 100% in on what you're doing? How do you build that team? Because I'm assuming you've got a pretty reasonable sized team now. How many people at the company?
We have 45 in our office.
45.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's that process been like?
It's really hard finding great people. We've gotten very lucky with the people that we have here. But yeah, no, it's really hard. And I think we've just stuck to our guns. Like we know in our hearts what's right. And sometimes you need to make a hire.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people will think, well, I could always fire this person. So if they're not right, I'll fire them. But then you just invested in their training and how it's going to affect the team, losing somebody. And, we definitely don't take that mindset when we're hiring people. We're really, really picky, and we really see the process through the right way, in our opinion, where we're not just going to hire somebody with the understanding that, oh, well, we could fire them. It's
Yeah.
like, if we're hiring them, we're planning on having them with us forever. So we're just really, really picky about the people that we bring on, and we hold culture in if anything higher regard than we do to competency. Sometimes you can't always tell how great somebody's going to be in an interview, but you can really tell pretty quickly how somebody's going to interact with the team. And we've been just crazy about making sure that people that are going to come in, not only from a competency performance standpoint, but from a cultural and just social standpoint, that they're going to come in and raise the bar and make our company an even happier place and a better place to work.
Yeah, man. I think I'm very biased. I say I like to quote. I think it's Peter Drucker said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And
I love that.
this idea, and there's another great story where someone asked Albert Einstein what his phone number was, and he didn't have a response. He's like, I don't know. I don't have it memorized. And someone was like, but you're like the smartest person in the world. And he said, I don't memorize things that I can just look up. And there was this element for me where, to your point, with competency is important. You need people to be able to do a good job, but it's, in my opinion, easier to train someone to do tasks or to understand a system than it is to, coach and train someone to, show up a certain way or to think a certain way. It takes a lot more energy. It's not a bad thing to do, but it just takes more energy.
For sure. I mean, teaching the soft skills is pretty tough.
Yeah.
It's usually something that you learn over your lifetime.
Yeah.
Whereas skill set for the office is a totally different. I mean, we've brought some interns on who had no experience prior to starting with us, and now they're leading pieces of the company. So I mean, I think it's just about, you find people that are really amazing, who really care about the mission, and they agree with the vision, and they live it as much as we do, who are just great people to be around. And you invest in them and help develop them professionally. And it's unbelievable the changes that you could see in people in a really short amount of time, if you just believe in them and give them the confidence to be themselves and to flourish. I think confidence is such a underrated piece of how people will perform in the workplace.
Yeah.
I think if you could be really smart and competent, but if you're not confident in yourself, it's not going to come through. And it works both ways.
Yeah. I mean, I spend, my full time, what I get paid to do is, coaching and leadership development. So it's all about that, building those, to your point, those soft skills, but also, like nurturing people's learning and ability to even teach themselves things over time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. People are, it's amazing what people are capable of if they have the confidence and you work with them and invest in their growth.
Yeah. It's amazing. And it's completely reasonable when you think about the capacity of humans, right? But we kind of, back to your earlier point, we find ourselves in these paths that are kind of soul sucking, or that we believe we should be down, and they're not bringing us joy. And it's easy to forget what we're capable of when you do that sort of time over time over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who's a founder that you admire and why?
Well, I don't want to give like a cliche Steve Jobs, but I mean, he just went so against the grain, and there were so many things that he did, and I'm sure even the people that worked for him were like, "It's not going to happen. This is not going to work. This is too novel. This is too different." And he didn't care. He knew what was right.
Yeah.
And I mean, he changed the world. So, I mean, that's my cliche answer for you.
I mean, I think that's fine.
I wish I could recall a better one.
I'm biased. I mean, I worked for Apple for a long time. I have a lot of respect for Steve Jobs, and he was far from perfect, but he accomplished a lot.
Yeah. That's an interesting point, because as a founder, I couldn't find myself to be any more different from him. And I think from like a performance, like changing the world standpoint, there's just nobody that compares to him.
Mm-hmm.
But from a leadership standpoint, and from what I've read about him, I definitely would not want to be like him. I would rather create an environment where everybody around me is really, really happy, and feels as though the person that they're working for is like really nice and cares about them.
Yeah.
That was probably like the one flaw in his leadership. But pretty much everything else, the guy was just so brilliant and ahead of his time.
Yeah, he did some pretty incredible things.
Yeah, unbelievable.
For listeners, what is the best way to follow along in your work? I mean, I don't know if you're sharing about your journey or if you're just heads down building the company. What's a good way for people to engage, interact, learn more if they want to learn more?
Oh, I mean, you could you can follow us on Instagram, and stay tuned for more news to come out about us. We're definitely going to be doing a lot this year. This is the year of team building and growth. So we are hiring like crazy right now. So if you're somebody that is interested in joining a New York-based startup that is changing an industry for the better, an industry that really needs to be changed, and you're somebody who is passionate about dogs and wants to work in an environment that is just filled with amazing, talented, happy people, you could find us at thefarmersdog.com/careers. If you're looking to make your dog healthier, it's thefarmersdog.com/Brett, BRETT, and you'll get yourself a 50% discount on your trial. But other than that, yeah, just follow along, and feel free. You could always shoot me an email, or you could DM me on Instagram. I get a lot of people that do that. And if you're ever just looking at chat, if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, I always section some time off. And always happy to chat with some people.
That's been easy. It was easy for me to get time with you. I appreciate that. You've got that calendar link, and you were flexible in rescheduling. Brett, I really appreciate having you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm super impressed, and I'm super psyched about what you're focused on.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Founder's Mind. Check back for a tangent episode with Brett as we dig into how he found his co-founder and what it was like to bring in their first hire. To make sure you don't miss any awesome wisdom from guests and stay up to date on the most recent episodes of the show, be sure to visit thefoundersmind.com. You can also follow along on social at The Founder's Mind. Last but not least, thank you to Roy Matz for the music on this show and his dope editing skills that make The Founder's Mind possible. Until next time, take care.